I decided to show some of your beauties.
Thank you very much. Great to be here. Good night, good afternoon. I think majority is from Turkey, I believe.
So we're expecting people from everywhere. People will join us soon. Thank you very
Okay.
much for accepting to be with us, Refik. I have some question to you, but I will make sure that our guests have chances also to ask questions to you. So I will minimize my questions and I will start immediately to my questions. Now, tell us about a bit your education. I know I know that you're always proud of telling that you're from Bilgi University. So
Yes.
tell us your story so that our students become proud of their own university as well.
Yes. So again, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. I'm joining you from Los Angeles, California, where am I living last 8 years, and teaching at UCLA, University of California Design Media Arts Department, where I got my second MFA degree. I'm running a studio, so we are 12 people, and we can speak 12 language, and we are our median age is 25, and everyone can code and program and use technology in their like daily life. My practice started, I guess, in 2008, as Eileen, you mentioned, during my studies at Bilgi University. My first experience in undergrad was a visual communication design department, where I was able to expose to many disciplines, such as design methods, design culture, cyber culture, photography, videography, nonlinear editing, compositing, motion graphics, 3D world of anything you may imagine, even programming, visual programming. So 2008, when I got graduated, I was doing physical computation and working with a software called VVVV, 4V. So this software allows you to create custom things that can use sound, video, data, text you imagine. It's basically software you can compute any information you wish. But I think the school, that Bilgi University, was a very major impact, had an impact on my career, because one of the most fundamental approach from the department was a fearlessly, like we were able to explore any medium without any ego problem of any discipline. So we were not fear of being an architect or an artist or a designer. Like we were not care about like titles, but we were caring about the ideas. So that was a very important, I think, start point to really, kill the ego and transform your ideas into as something. So growing there really helped me a lot. And I was also always in the academia. I never went to the cliche commercial world very intentionally to clean the soul and not to get, affected by the commercialism of behind like advertising agencies and other things that we know that doesn't have a positive impact in arts. So I tried to clean my soul by not joining the cliche game of titles and jobs. And thanks to the academia that host me, that allowed me and my many friends secure our minds and remain creative and keep dreaming. It was a very luxury selection, as you may guess, because being in the academia doesn't mean that you have enough resources in your life. But if you sacrifice, you have a chance to become, I think, who you want to be, I guess. So I'm very grateful to the Bilgi University about the potential of having this chance of staying in academia for a really long time. And I got my first Master of Fine Arts degree at VCD department as well. And I was very fortunate to work with Bernard Serex'e, who is a representative also at ZKM, a museum that is really, holds the very early first media art projects in the world. They basically go back to 70s, 60s, even like have pieces of technology, art, and science experiences. So my first mentors were also the people who have been defining the past by preserving them in the museum context. That's, I think, how I started. And then 2008, I did my first project in Istanbul as a project that I think changed many people's imagination about video projection. So I took Central Istanbul Museum as a canvas and transformed it into a living entity by projecting a light meticulously to the architecture and perfectly match it and transform the reality question. So that's how I started. And then from there, I think that it's pick up.
The first this project at Bilgi, which program you used? You used this VVVV?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can I share my screen for a little bit more visual clues?
Sure, sure.
This will make maybe just a second. Host disabled the screen sharing. If you can allow, I will.
Okay. Now you can do.
Thank you. So I think what was really, again, important, by the way, for people, if you want to just, say hi, it's my website and email. And for the videos, you want to see high quality, they're on my website. I'm sure Zoom will not make justice while showing photos. Actually, let me share again with optimize option, just a moment. Okay, so this should be now much better. So just this is my by the way, presentation I was hoping a little bit to share. But I think just want to also a little bit give a highlight. And I think the movie changed my practice is Blade Runner. And I was 8 years old when my mom brought home this VHS cassette that truly transformed who I am, actually, without knowing English, but super inspired by the future of architecture and media facades and the future of cities. But also in the movie, maybe you remember, and two androids really having discussions about their entities and who they are and their emotional impact with each other and many other things. So, and I got my first computer 2000. I got my first computer in the same year, 1993, when I was 8 years old, and that was just one of those moments in life, like when you start, dreaming with a machine and learning about the gaming and very early programming languages. So the project that I think I want to show you. Oh, by the way, in general, for people that doesn't know, this was the exhibition 2009 where the Turkey's first media arts festival, media arts museum experience done. And I was behind the major heavy lifter of the project. And there, where I just met with the really, how can I say, it was the first time I met with wonderful people from Berlin who have been speculating about embedding media arts into architecture. And thanks to the Lev Manovich, who was a wonderful mind, opening speech giving for his paper about poetics of augmented space. And I think what I do is technically collaborating with architects and embedding data, invisible data flows of life into the buildings or public space, or even galleries or museums. So this is a very high level speculation in my work. You will see a lot. You will see a frame all the time. That frame actually comes from this desire back in time. Literally, I think my first year of MFA studies, 2010, I was obsessed with this idea. I was obsessed with the idea of how can we go beyond the flatness of a screen. And how can we do that by looking at the past of Renaissance, especially as we all know, that how actually architects and painters and wonderful collaborations have been happening in 1300, 1600. And for me, that's exactly the idea that I mentioned, transforming Central Istanbul, which is this building, into this form. So that's where the things get out of control. There are many projects like this all over the Europe, and even Sana's building in Japan, in Japanese architects in Germany. And I think the most important one for my career is 2011, when I have a chance to transform the street sound data from the Istiklal Street and transform it into a 3-dimensional data sculpture, which was 2011. And that's when I start using raw data and then transform it into basically 3-dimensional forms. And coming back to the frame idea, this frame idea is 2011's concept that couldn't happen because putting a frame on a building is impossibly expensive. So, but at the end, we were able to create Turkey's, and I think world's first data sculpture in 3D space. So what you are seeing is a three-dimensional data sculpture that is transforming itself into the data from the street and the sound and transforming into a three-dimensional sculpture. That's basically where I think so this universe is where I think my journey keeps
So
going, and then from there
you transform the voices of the streets into some forms.
correct. So here we can see it, by the way.
Which
As you
program
see,
you use this?
This is, yeah, so this is a collaboration with an architect, Alper Derinboğaz. And there's a software you can see on the down. It's used in parametric design in Rhino and a plugin called Grasshopper. Mm-hmm. So I've been using visual programming language pretty much like last, again, 11 years, maybe 12 years. Mm-hmm. But it's an architectural software that allows you to like take the data and also even transcode into like forms and splines and superposed splines that can later become a rib of a building and so on. So it was like one of the first data sculpture, actually. I mean, I think in its own context, it augmented by light. So it was a very pioneer piece, but then of course that really triggered my mind more and more. And then, but I think I'm much more inspired the technology as a whole, like not because data, not because like this cool techno fetish imagination of the near future of cyberpunk feelings. I think I was much more really asking the question, how these machines and systems are changing us. Like, how are we becoming something new? A machine that allows us to like go anywhere. A machine tells us what to eat, what to say, what to listen, what to watch, what to eat, what to read. I mean, I don't think we have the control at all in our hands anymore. But also the question of like, how can we actually becoming these new entities that are controlled or filling in the virtual space, or let's call it like that sense of displacement. We do not know where we are most of the time. And at the meantime, the art is transforming itself. We are pretty sure that the young generations are constantly getting data and information whenever they want and however they want. So waiting in a queue for 2 hours for a painting is not anymore, I think, sufficient for the young generation. So I think John Maeda is a genius mind and saying design is a solution to a problem and art is a question to a problem. And my question is very humbly and very challengingly, what does it really mean to be a human in 21st century? And that's, I think, how I put my all works on top of this context and really understand that. I have like super simple, approach last maybe 11 years. I'm always exploring the humans, machines, and environments, the context between these universes. And doing this is by just simply taking physical and the virtual world and colliding them. So that's, I think, what you can see and hear in my work.
This is great. I want you also to talk about the project that you realize at the laboratory of Caltech University, I guess. The with EEG.
Melting memories. Melting, yes, yeah. So just for the people, it's a great question because something very exciting happened. So I think after the moving to the United States and studying at UCLA, always my idea was opening a studio. I never enjoyed being alone and doing things egocentrically. But to open a studio means it's an operation, right? It's a thinking. Like, as we all know, like Andy Warhol has a factory, but I was not into like this Jeff Koons style, lots of people doing things. I was just much into this idea of thinking together, imagining together at the same time.
When you decided to go to California for this master program, you had everything in your mind, not coming back and settling in US, doing all this. You were very much motivated, or you were hesitating?
So, I mean, very openly saying, after the Istanbul augmented structure 2011 for Istanbul Biennale, I was aware what I can do myself. I see my own limitations. And very openly judging myself, the question was what else I can do if I was a much bigger team? Because bringing depth to surface is not easy. And surface is always we can create. It's not a hard, shiny pixels, bunch of now people are doing at the moment, even in Istanbul Festival, like you can see, like blinking lights. I mean, they do not mean anything. They are just cool computer graphics. But really how to bring depth to surface, that comes with research, that comes with dedication and spend time in a scholar context. You cannot just use a bunch of softwares available and claim that you have something fresh. So I don't want to, and if you work for public space, whatever you do is honesty, right? So you cannot lie. I don't think it's a responsibility for the creator. But at the meantime, I thought that museum and galleries are 21st century idea. I mean, you're opening a door. Behind that door, there is art. I think that is so 21st century. I don't think it is the most smartest way of distributing, experience of art into, in near future. So I was already aware of those. But what really triggered my imagination is Greg Lynn and Christian Moller, my two heroes and mentors at UCLA. They were at Istanbul Biennale and they saw the piece. And they said, like, how did you do this? Like, how old are you? I mean, it's just, I said, like, in 3 weeks, we make the fabrication. It took 6 months to think about it. But in 3 weeks, we execute the experience because of the budget and reality of Turkey and the funds and things. But I wasn't hopeless. I mean, I was not hopeless. I was always like hopeful shortly in any project. But the US idea came around those time. And I was 100% sure the schools in Europe was not giving the same amount of ambitious, but I was thinking much beyond my, certain imagination. And I know that art and, how can I say, Los Angeles. So by the way, MIT, Harvard, and UCLA happened at the same time. There was no problem in acceptance of the schools. But the problem for me was which really school has my mentors in it that have the most, functioning relationship I can do. So Casey Rias, the founder and the mind behind the processing, the person who started, I think, creative computation. Christian Moller, one of the most genius mind, trained by Peter Weibel, and he is a hero in public art, a pioneer. Jennifer Steinkamp, one of the most important pioneer artists who started many incredible installation with projection. Rebecca Mendez, Rebecca Allen, who invented the wireframe computation at MIT. Like, these are like very important people I know that I want to work with. So that's where I go there, and with the idea to open a studio and to make this for public art, use data and especially AI. So it was all dream when I was starting my journey. It was not random or just like, let's do something like that I think. So it's, I think, where the clarity comes the game.
You advance step by step. Actually, where the idea of collecting using different data sets and creating these data sculptures. One after the other, all these works are independently joyful and thoughtful and extremely creative.
Thank you very much.
Huge work behind. And another interesting thing which I want to also you to talk about, that you're really creating the art of 21st century, because you're really creating the experience of art. And now the Pace Gallery is doing that. We see lots of collaborations, team labs, and etc. So art becoming more and more an experience.
Very true. Very true.
Art groups.
So I totally agree with you, first of all, because I think so about the experience part, but and thank you for the humble inputs. But I think I was always inspired by the freshness of an idea, not just, repeat myself, or I was always inspired by, but first of all, the very first fundamental concept, I thought art should be for anyone, any age, and any background. Mm-hmm. And what I say now is surreal, right? Because we have cultures in the world, we have many aspects of humanity, but this idea of creating or inventing a language that can be perceived like a mathematics, right? The mathematics is one of the most fundamental languages. Talks about the nature, physics, and everything that life can hold in a conceptual way. But what is a language of art that can do the same thing? That doesn't make people feel not connected, or egocentric artworks doesn't have connection immediately. From 6 months to 60 years old, or 96 years old. How can we capture the imagination of the audience in a way that can feel connected with the near future? So this concept is not I mean, a random thing. I was imagining this, like, again, since, yeah, I don't know. Whenever I start touching a computer, the idea was always there. So that's the idea of using this, inventing an experience that can be felt by the audience in a way that they feel connected. So I was not like here to say the other art forms are not easy to understand, but I'm saying the technology we use, the machines we invent, I mean, every single interacting with, are giving us a different dimension. And this dimension is beyond just a classical pigment or bronze or the mediums we know from other art practices. And now the machines can communicate each other. Machines are predicting engines and systems. We have something doesn't forget. I mean, how can we ignore the beauty or the potential of communication with machines? So there was, I think, this idea was always in the core of my imagination. But I think what really changed, let me show you quickly my screen again. What really changed my imagination is, by the way, again, being in Los Angeles was super helpful, as you may guess. But I was not in the studio, by the way. If you think about what is a media artist means you are on the streets of whatever you are. Most likely, if you work with this, light as a material, or working with the, I was augmenting the LA River, the trees, the buildings constantly. But I think what really changed my trajectory is this building called Walt
Well,
Disney Concert Hall.
this is
So I
great.
want to a little bit talk about this project, if you're okay with that, because
Yes,
as a
please.
student, thank you. So I knew that I need to create something new for my career after coming from 3 years of traveling all over the Europe. And Frank Gehry, my hero, I mean, Zahari, Tado, Ando, Toyo Ito, all like I think pretty much my heroes. But his building was in my mind, in my dream. Like, if I go to Los Angeles, I will see this building and look at it from like very close distance. And the good news is that when I come to Los Angeles 2012, rent a car and went there and look at the building. And then it was so beautifully alone and dark at 2 a.m. at night. And that was 2012 when I started thinking about, like, what will happen if a building have a cognitive capacity of learning, remembering, or dreaming, or hallucinating. So this concept was just like triggered in my mind when I go there at that night. And the same year, 1 year later, I got invited to Microsoft Research, which is a very important event where you are between Carnegie Mellon, MIT, Harvard, and so on. People with a great product ideas, let's call it like that, boring product ideas. I came there with an art idea. I said, like, can a building dream? Can it learn? And the good news is, I wasn't aware where am I, by the way, with my short, but the good news, in the jury, there was even Bill Gates. So that's how I think, and my art collection, my arts in the collection changed, but also my first truly mentor also advised me to go this path. So 2013, getting the first data from Frank Gehry and graduating in 2014 was how I think everything started. But I want to show you, and this project, I'll show this project later. But the first thing we did is literally very interesting. So if you think about an art studio working with tech giants, don't please think that it's a boring startup page. These people do not ask us to move a logo or do like boring commercial stuff. These people are truly helping or imagining together with an algorithm, with a hardware, software, even data. So this is the part that I think we started a movement in the arts. So imagine 2015, or I mean even 13, as you see Microsoft, but 2015, we took this opportunity, and that's how it started. I want to show you. So in United States, you have an option to create public data, so public art for public, and you have like competition. So 2015, I won my very first competition by the proposal of three-dimensional data sculptures embedding into a building by using open data from the city of San Francisco. And the idea was not just create a piece that is just two-dimensional, it was a three-dimensional exploration of the canvas. And bringing this three-dimensional sculpture into the building, it turned into the world's first data sculpture in this context. So this project changed the trajectory, because in San Francisco, like Facebook, Twitter, Nvidia, Google, all of them were saying,